Part 41. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 401. Chapter 401. Not pregnant, but the child is mine. Hello, my name is Gretel Nordmark, priest of the god of nature. What is your name? Galena. Galena Thane. How old are you this year? 15. Where does it hurt? Stomachache. Greet sat cross-legged on the edge of the felt and asked softly, while writing down notes. Female, 15 years old, considered to be a barbarian by race. Due to severe abdominal pain, there was no such thing as hospitalization. The patient is unmarried and has no children, has no history of miscarriage, has regular menstruation, normal menstrual cycle, menstrual period and amount, and no history of dysmenorrhea. Miss Silver Dragon's charm humans is really easy to use. I asked her if she had ever had a miscarriage or anything, but she didn't jump up and hit me. In a previous life, when asking a young woman about this problem, the doctor would always be in danger. You have to watch the patient's words, fight wits and courage with the patient, and guard against being beaten by the patient's parents. How is it like now? When you ask her questions, she says nothing, and after listening to her heart and lungs, she is asked to lie down for a physical examination, and she is obedient. Greet glanced at Miss Silver Dragon gratefully. It's so convenient to have her here. When treating young female patients, we don't have to find ways to find a female nurse. What? Is she a silver dragon? Silver Dragon is a girl too. Greet sighed and focused her energy on Galena's abdomen. With just one glance, his face turned serious. Biased. The distended abdomen is not the highest in the middle and symmetrical, but is obviously tilted to the right. This is a bit troublesome. The swelling is to the right, hepatomegaly. Right kidney. Intestine. If the swelling reaches this level, the inflammation is already very serious. Gretel, is she pregnant? SHH. Greet scoffed lightly without raising her head, telling her not to speak. He rubbed his hands together and carefully placed them on Galena's abdomen. He put his four fingers together and touched them little by little along the perimeter of the bulging area. A huge mass could indeed be palpated. It reaches up to the xiphoid process and down to the level of the umbilicus. At this position, pregnancy can basically be ruled out. If you are pregnant, the bulge will go down a little further, and it will be located in the pelvic area, below the level of the umbilicus. Therefore, if the girl's father scolds her again, he will immediately retaliate. Not pregnant. Where is the pregnancy? At least, such a big belly is not caused by pregnancy. Making sure you're not pregnant doesn't solve the problem. Greet continued to check, and found that the right side of the tumor reached the front axillary line, and the left side reached the midclavicular line. This was a bit extreme. After a little push, there is no mobility. Tisk, it's a bit troublesome. Gretel glanced at the medical record beside him, and then returned his attention to the patient. Sarala followed his gaze, her eyes lit up, and she waved, and a breeze blew out, rolling the paper and pen into her hand. Greet, tell me, I'll remember it. Don't make trouble. Greet drank lightly. Writing medical records is never that easy. Even interns who have studied medicine for several years will be scolded by their teachers the first time they take dictation of medical records. You know absolutely nothing about medicine, how do you write this? Also, put down my endless ink pen. That's the light source of X-rays. We'll need it soon. Let me write it. Sarala pouted dissatisfiedly. She knew the importance and did not reach out to grab Gretel's arm, but several small colorful light balls popped up and floated up and down not far in front of him to express her dissatisfaction. Greet looked at her helplessly. Okay, I want you to write, come on, start. The whole abdomen is distended, and the shape does not change significantly when you move the body dash. What's the word for bulge? You are empty first. No gastrointestinal pattern or peristaltic waves are seen, the right lower abdominal muscle is tense, and McFarland point tenderness. Wait. What and what? Look, I'll write it. Cyrilla directly stuck the medical record on his face. Well, considering Miss Silverdragon's strength, this paste is already very gentle. Greet shook his head, shook down the medical record book, and continued palpation. Well, there is no palpable abnormality in the right adnexal area, and a cystic mass half the size of a palm can be palpated in the left adnexal area, with poor movement and no tenderness. Another trouble, tisk, and he is not good at gynecology. For surgeries, we always ask gynecologists to come down for consultation. There is a clinical joke that a general surgeon, a urologist, and a gynecologist collaborate to perform an operation. The general surgeon pulled the intestines and prayed not to damage the ureters and fallopian tubes. The urologist freed the ureter while praying not to damage the intestines and fallopian tubes. While the gynecologist was loosening adhesions, he prayed not to damage the intestines and ureters. Every other line is like a mountain, that's how sad it is. Greet murmured softly and slid the endless ink pen under the patient's body. Well, seeing that there is no intestinal obstruction in the intestines, but there is so much pain and screams, the first thing to consider is appendicitis. Also, what is the huge mass on the right abdomen? Greet pondered and moved the endless ink pen upwards. His pupils shrank instantly. Inside the mass on the patient's right abdomen, he saw calcification points that shouldn't exist at this location. Okay, it looks like the B ultrasound is about to start. Greet quickly finished the abdominal X-ray, took out a small bottle of treasure, and applied ultrasound coupling agent, which is actually glycerin, to the patient's abdomen. Well, it's cheap, energy-producing, widely used, and can be used to synthesize a variety of useful things. Even if this thing is used for B ultrasound, and its accuracy is far inferior to the water-based coolant in the previous life, it still does not prevent Greet from carrying a large bottle with him. Gretel formed his fingers into claws and placed the tips of his 5 fingers on the patient's abdomen. He closed his eyes and concentrated, activating the B ultrasound magic. In an instant, Cyrilla's eyes lit up. She stretched her head, and her long pointed elf ears spread out in a circle, revealing a round of sharp thorns and a translucent membrane stretched by the thorns. What sound? What are you doing making this sound? She even tried to touch Gretel's fingers. Gretel slapped her away. Stop making trouble. It's time to check. The size and echo of the right appendage were normal, the echo of a cystic light group was seen in the left appendage. The size, the feedback from the meditation field of vision was about larger than half of his hand, that is, 6 centimeters to 5 centimeters, and the internal fluid was thick. Right upper quadrant. As his fingers moved little by little, Gretel's expression became serious little by little. There are cystic light group echoes in the right upper quadrant that reach up to the subcostal area, down to the level of the umbilicus, from the right side to the front axillary line, and from the left side to the left midclavicular line. There are separations, and the internal fluid is clear, the liquid level can be seen, and there is strong reflection. Sound and light group. How is it? Is she pregnant? Sarah leaned her head again, and if it weren't for the thorns on the helix, her chin would almost be on Gretel's shoulder. Greet frowned slightly and said nothing. Pregnancy is definitely not pregnancy, but... Suddenly there was a noise outside the door. A dry, hoarse male voice that had no resemblance to the female patient's father shouted from a distance. Child. My child. Give me that child. Sarah pressed the floor and jumped up. After a moment, she pinched a thin, dry necromancer dressed in black and came in. Is that child yours? It's a ghost baby. I raised it? Of course it's mine. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 402. Greet's hand paused while doing the B ultrasound. What? What is a ghost baby? What the hell is training and growing up? He has examined everything and is about to come to a conclusion. Now tell him that it is a ghost baby cultivated by a necromancer? Gretel wanted to turn around and ask, but when his hand moved, he still stopped. The B ultrasound has been completed halfway, so it is better to finish it. Being distracted halfway will affect the accuracy of the examination. Well, the liver is somewhat displaced, the intrahepatic bile ducts are dilated, the gallbladder, spleen, and pancreas are all fine, the appendix is swollen, and there is no intestinal obstruction. As for the necromancer, you can ask at any time. Well, Bernard has already brought in the patient's family members who have finished calming down. You are the one who harmed my daughter? Go to hell. The middle-aged man was covered in water and rushed forward dripping wet. If Bernard hadn't grabbed him in time, there was a high probability that the two of them would have twisted together and fought. The necromancer who survived was confident. He struggled in the hands of the silver dragon girl, raised his chin with all his strength, and raised a proud posture. Who harmed her? 3 years ago, when her mother was ill, you begged me to treat her. What did you promise me? Ask her to do something for me, anything. Is that what you promised? But you didn't say you were raising ghost babies. Nonsense, if it's not for the ghost baby, why should I help you? Besides, I didn't put the ghost baby in, she was already pregnant. Ahem. Gretel finally finished checking and turned to join the discussion. Excuse me. Sorry, I was busy just now and didn't have time to introduce myself. My name is Gretel Nordmark. What is your name? Mage Nordmark. The necromancer's eyes lit up. He struggled to get up hastily. On the isolation and treatment of large-scale outbreaks of dysentery, study on several epidemic pathogenic bacteria. Is there anyone here who has read my paper? Greet was a little surprised and nodded quickly. Sure enough, it was easier to communicate with the research department. In just a few words, he asked what the other party had done. Using special techniques, he cultivated the ghost baby in the woman's body and used it as a container for the dead soul in his hands. The reason why ghost babies are used is because living babies have their own souls and are mutually exclusive with dead souls. It's hard to find women who are pregnant with ghost babies. I've been looking for 10 years, and I finally found 3. The first 2 possessions failed. The ghost babies that were cultivated were just a ball of flesh and no bones, so they couldn't be used at all. You mean, she was pregnant with a ghost baby? Of course. I can't make something out of nothing. Greet silently lit a candle for him. It's already there, but it's just accelerated by magic, so that the front and back are aligned. Isn't it just a teratoma? The incidence rate of this thing is indeed not high. With the population density of the Blackgate Peninsula, this guy can find 3 in 10 years. He is very lucky. But, brother, what method did you use to make the teratoma grow to such a big size? Generally speaking, a diameter of 4-5 centimeters is already very large, and a diameter of 10 centimeters is very rare in clinical practice. You're talking nonsense, the middle-aged man roared on the other side. You must have killed my daughter. She's not pregnant with this thing, so why should I find her? Couldn't it be that you used magic to put it in? Gretel sighed. He turned to face the girl's father. No matter what the situation is, we have to solve the problem first. Your daughter has such a stomachache, can I treat her first? What do you want? The middle-aged man looked at him warily. Gretel tried his best to show a friendly smile. We have no ill intentions, we just want to help your daughter. You see, I am a servant of the god of nature, and this lady is an elf. How could we harm your daughter? The reputations of nature god priests and elves are obviously much better than those of necromancers. The guard on the man's face became slightly less alert. "What are you going to do?" Gretel thought for a while, and first condensed a ball of healing power, which penetrated into the girl's body. "He is getting lazier now and doesn't want to have surgery when treatment can be used." Well, minimally invasive is the trend, so treatment is even more of a trend, isn't it? Under the guidance of B ultrasound, the treatment successfully reached the appendix. Seeing that the swollen appendix was getting smaller and smaller, and the girl's pale face had recovered a little, Gretel clapped his hands. If it was just a problem of abdominal pain, then it would have been solved now. But this ghost baby. He turned to the necromancer. "When it's grown, how do you get it out?" The necromancer made a disembowelment gesture. "I kill you." Bernard quietly let go. The middle-aged man swooped forward, passed over Cyrilla, who was deliberately late to dodge, and blasted the necromancer with a hammer. The hacked necromancer received several heavy blows before he propped up his mage armor and squatted on the ground with his head in his hands. "Don't fight, don't fight. I brought holy water. I brought more than one bottle. I won't let her die." Gretel stood watching with his arms folded. Not telling the truth beforehand, and even coaxing and lying to make the girl's stomach bigger. This kind of behavior is definitely worthy of a beating. If it were a previous life, it would have taken more than one beating. Refer to the surgeon who carved SB on the patient's liver. Anyway, the armor was hung up, and letting him get hammered would be conducive to the subsequent communication. Seeing that the middle-aged man's arms were swinging slower and slower, and the outer edges of his fists were a little red, he pretended to stop him. "Sir, please calm down first, things have to be resolved, right? Your daughter is a beautiful girl, and she shouldn't have to endure this. As healers, we hope to help her solve her troubles as safely as possible." Cyrilla hid behind him, blinked her eyes, and quietly cast a soothing spell. The middle-aged man finally became quiet. He stared at his daughter steadily, looking from her pale face to her bulging belly, and then from her belly to her face. After a long time, he suddenly squatted on the spot, hugged his head and started crying. Half an hour later, the middle-aged man picked up his daughter with his own hands and placed the floating saucer released by greed. He reluctantly stood at the door of the wooden house, watching the two invisible servants carrying his daughter into the refuge cabin released by Miss Silver Dragon. The hemisphere created by magic fluctuated slightly, and the figure disappeared inside, never to be seen again. Greet, Cyrilla, Bernard, and the necromancer filed in. "This, the ghost baby I gave birth to, should I handle it?" "I'm afraid not." Gretel sighed deeply. If it were an ordinary ovarian teratoma, he might still be able to trust the necromancer's surgical skills. But now this thing has grown on the liver. I checked just now and found that the liver has been compressed and deformed by it. The risk of surgery is very high, and the possibility of massive bleeding is high. I will be the one to perform this surgery. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Asking for various. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 403. Cyrilla, please help the girl take off her clothes. Okay. Cyrilla, you clean her body, cleanse, iodine, alcohol, each in order. Do you remember the method I taught you? It's so troublesome. Please, please. After wiping, cover it with a cloth in order, and then call us in. Gretel clasped his hands in front of his chest, moved them up and down, and said goodbye quickly. The silver dragon girl pursed her lips. Okay, I'm just here to help you. Remember to tell me during the operation. That's for sure. The silver dragon girl hummed a song and entered the center of the refuge hut, a specially separated operating room surrounded by opaque walls. With a hook of slender fingers, cotton balls, towels all flew up, wiped, and covered. Greet also said to use towel pliers to clamp the intersection and fix it. What is that? He didn't give it to me. Yes, it's adhesion. Magical fluorescent flashes. The transformation system is a level 0 magic, a special magic specially used to bond lighter objects. It can silently stick several pieces of towels together. Greet went in after brushing her hands and saw that Galena was lying quietly on the operating table. Her head, chest, and legs were all covered by dark green drapes, and only her high bulging abdomen was exposed. A cold light flashed on the side of the patient's feet, and scalpels, retractors, vascular clamps, etc. were neatly arranged in a row on the floating dish. The shadowless lamp above his head poured out white light, and everything was exactly the same as the scene in the operating room in his previous life. Ah, I feel comfortable. Someone carries the patient, someone disinfects, someone spreads drapes, and someone prepares the equipment. When you walk inside, everything is ready and waiting for the operation. This is what the chief surgeon does. He raised his hands flat on his chest and walked to the edge of the operating table. Stretching out his hand, Cyrilla moved her fingers slightly, and a mage's hand held the scalpel and brought it to his hand. Although it was not accurately smacked in the palm of the hand, Greet still tilted his head slightly and smiled sincerely at her after taking the handle of the knife. Ms. Yinlong is so awesome. In addition to the traveling nurse, she also serves as the equipment nurse. Happiness index at 10,086. He was in a happy mood, and his tone became brisk when he was operating and explaining at the same time. We have now completed the hypnosis and delaying pain. The scope of this spell is controlled in the abdomen. When the abdominal wall is incised, the patient will not wake up. While opening the abdomen, use the scalpel to guide the therapeutic power to heal the skin damage. To reduce bleeding, this new scalpel is really easy to use. The product produced by the Dwarves must be of high quality. If it is said to be mixed with mithril, it must be mixed with mithril. The magic power is transmitted smoothly and silkily. Compared with when he used a glass rod embedded with silver threads to guide the growth magic when doing bacterial culture, the effect is more than doubled and doubled again. The most important thing is that it is clean, pollution-free and odor-free. In my previous life, I used an electric knife to stop the bleeding. Who knew the smell of barbecue, and the smoke was so thick that even the suction machine couldn't inhale it. Surgeons have been exposed to this environment for a long time, and the damage to their lungs is worse than second-hand smoke. It would be great if this kind of thing could bring back past lives. Introduce it to colleagues and benefit countless doctors and patients. Okay, the abdominal dissection has been completed, and the scalpel is taken away. Sarah, please help pull the hook. Okay, the mage's hand is so timely. Outward. 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 Stop. He raised his left hand and gave it a thumbs up. In order to avoid contaminating the operating table, Cyrilla stood 3 steps behind the patient and performed all operations with the hands of a mage. The necromancer stood further away, watching the operation process purely with his arcane eyes, muttering as he watched. Why is there so much trouble? Isn't it just ghost babies? I got 2 of them before, and the adults are not dead. Why don't you let me get started? Oh shit. A huge meatball appeared in front of me. The surface is smooth and covered with a membrane, and the top part has already reached the liver. The necromancer immediately stopped talking. He knows how fragile the liver is and how easy it is to bleed. When dissecting an animal, if you accidentally cut it with a knife or just pull it, you can see the blood immediately. It was racing and racing, but there was nothing left. Greet also immediately turned serious. He roughly explored it and found that the huge tumor reached below the diaphragm and down to the level of the umbilicus. There are a lot of adhesions in the pelvic cavity, and the liver is pushed to the upper right. Looking at that position, there may be adhesions with the liver. Gretel, how are you? Do you need my help? Miss Silver Dragon whispered to the side. The white light on her fingertips was jumping, and she was ready for the treatment. Greet shook his head slightly. No need for the moment. Just be prepared. Give me the hemostatic forceps, the second one from the right in the first row. Okay Sirara, thank you. Well done. Although he can use the hands of a mage, when it comes to troublesome operations, he still trusts his own hands, and the operating techniques he has practiced for many years. The liver, etc., if the strength is a little too heavy during the freeing process, it will cause trouble every minute. Hemostatic forceps and tissue forceps move gently in Gretel's hands. Blunt separation, with a slight swing, tear the omentum that is stuck together into a small slit, and then separate it forward. The omentum, which was as tender as tofu and as soft as a blister, was silently torn into two pieces by him, revealing the blood vessels buried in it. Sarala, the gauze absorbs blood. Okay. A mage's hand flew over with a sterile gauze, dipped it in the spot pointed by Greet, and then flew away with the gauze. Celara, this blood vessel is connected to the tumor and supplies blood to it. I have freed it now. I need to ligate it first, then cut it off, and finally treat the broken end to prevent it from bleeding. I will cut it, you come to treat me. No problem. A small healing flower flew over. Following Greet's blade, the severed blood vessel was completely healed. Sirala, give me some light. Immediately. A ball of light floated up, illuminating the space below the tumor and above the left lobe of the liver. Sarala, look at this tube on the surface of the flesh ball. This is the fallopian tube. It is good. We have to get it to the edge completely without breaking it or damaging it. Otherwise, this girl will not be able to survive in the future. I'm pregnant. Okay, I'm swimming away a little bit, so I'll put some padding down there. Little things. A tiny mage's hand flew over, flattened it, stuffed it underneath, and closed it carefully. The almighty Miss Silver Dragon, the almighty hand of the mage. The more Gretel did it, the more at ease he felt. Only an hour had passed, and everything from the liver to the pelvic cavity had been freed. Two mage hands held the cut meatball and lifted it out of the abdominal cavity. Sirala, get a basin. Here it comes. It'll be ready right away. The cyst on the ovary has also been removed. We are going to close the abdomen. Sarara, please count the number of surgical instruments and gauze to see if they are correct. No problem, we are done. Congratulations to the protagonist for finally having a permanent assistant. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Looking for Miss Yinlong's nurse uniform? Can anyone draw one? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 404. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12. 12. Greet, there are many surgical instruments. Okay, 12. Greet summoned a bright light at the same time, starting from the first scalpel and sweeping over them one by one. 1, 2, 3, the reflection on the floating disc flashed a total of 12 times, showing that Miss Silver Dragon's count was accurate. There is no way. According to the surgical instrument and item inventory system, surgical items should be counted by the instrument nurse and the circulating nurse. Count twice before starting the operation, once before closing the cavity and organs, before closing the body cavity or deep incision, before suturing the skin, and before leaving the operating room at the end of the operation. What? No traveling nurse? Greet looked behind him. Should he let Bernard go up, or should he let the necromancer go up? Forget it, just do it yourself. Bah, With the healing power, there is no need for surgical needles, sutures and the like. There is no need to remove them one by one. Gretel recalled the miserable situation when half of the needle was missing after the operation, and he lay down for 2 hours from the chief surgeon to the circulating nurse. He shuddered and gave himself a thumbs up. Fortunately, next, I just need to light up the gauze again and it's over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Gretel, the number of gauze is correct too. Okay, you can prepare to close your abdomen. Come on, give me the holy water. The necromancer took out the holy water with a face full of pain. There was nothing he could do, it was his own fault, and he had to pay something. In fact, when Greet took off the meatball, he was frightened by the many operations, fearing that he would go to the room with a slurp of blood. To his surprise, Greet did not pour it all out with a splash, but carefully took a little bit and dripped in the saline. While dripping, he explained to the girl next to him. Holy water mixed with normal saline, 1:1000, has the best anti-infection effect. Rinse the abdominal cavity once to kill all kinds of bacteria, lest the areas left untouched by the treatment will multiply in the abdominal cavity and cause another serious illness. Suck the salt water out. Okay. The girl raised her hand happily. The crystal clear water column rose into the air and fell into the sink without splashing a drop. The necromancer squatted down sadly. Alas, everyone is a magician, and they have a girl, a beautiful elf girl, or an elf girl who just listens to whatever she says. He only has himself, a skeleton soldier, a dead soul. Forget it, the meatball was finally taken out. Let's see if the dead soul can successfully attach. He solemnly took off a necklace. Hold the pendant tightly, hold it in the palm of your hand, pause for a moment, open your palm and adjust the position, then hold it tightly again. After 3 years of hard searching, 3 years of careful cultivation, and all the hard-earned wealth from doing missions to kill monsters and collect herbs, I have invested it all in. Victory or failure, success or failure, all in one fell swoop. The magic power activated, and the dead soul flew out of the pendant silently. It circled half a circle, sank down, and flew into the meatball. Move, move, move. Shake, sway, jump, twitch. No response. Ah! The necromancer squatted on the ground holding his head and couldn't help but let out a scream. Why is there no response? Why is there no response? He has obviously been waiting patiently for more than half a year to make sure that the thing has grown big enough, and that the meatball has been completely taken out, and even the capsule has not been broken. That's right, the envelope. Is it because the capsule has not been broken and the ghost baby inside cannot struggle out? The necromancer rolled and crawled towards the operating table. The steel basin containing the teratoma, to Gretel, it was a pathological basin. Sarala casually threw a levitation spell and let it float on the edge of the stage. I thought this thing was disgusting, so I pushed it away. The necromancer grabbed the edge of the steel basin with his left hand and turned his right hand over. A dagger struck the flesh ball with a cold light. Hey, what are you doing? Gretel screamed. Miss Yinlong raised her eyes, picked up a pair of hemostatic forceps, and threw it at her head. The necromancer jumped down and narrowly avoided it. There was a rustle in the wind, and a streak of silver light brushed across the cheek, and with a loud bang, it was deeply embedded in the wall of the operating room. My hemostat dash! Gretel screamed. That's what he just got. The dwarf just made it for him recently, mixed with mithril gold, which is strong, rust-free, and easy to channel magical power. Hemostatic forceps are what surgeons more commonly use. It is used much more frequently than a scalpel. Too high? Miss Silverdragon stuck out her tongue. She casually hooked it, and the walls of the operating room made of magic disappeared. The hemostat fell freely, and was recalled by her casually. Looking left and right, it seemed that it was not broken. He spread his hands in front of Gretel and chuckled. Bring back the wall. Sterile environment. Hey, I'd better shut up my belly quickly. Greet was sweating profusely and felt that there were problems everywhere. Why did he think before that Miss Yinlong was already a reliable nurse? Without several years of medical education, it is obviously impossible to be reliable. Woo, failed again, woo, the ghost baby still can't move, still can't move. The necromancer squatted on the ground with his head in his hands, all his strength gone. Greet looked at his pitiful appearance, sighed, quickly closed his abdomen, and went to help him. Let's go out first and let Sarah address the girl. By the way, if you expect this thing to be like a baby, with the dead soul attached to it, it can run and jump. I'm afraid it won't work. He won't grow. The torso and limbs. How do you know? Because Teradamash cannot grow a full set of bones, and because I didn't see a normal spine or limb bones on X-rays and B ultrasounds. Greet sighed secretly, picked up the pathology basin with one hand, and dragged the necromancer out with the other. Take it to the patient's father to see. If you want to confirm, I can find a reason later and cut it open for you to see. The walls of the escape cabin were once again turbulent like water waves. The two magicians stepped out of the wall. Facing the anxious-looking middle-aged man, Gretel cast a loudspeaker spell on himself and spoke first. Your daughter is fine. Cyrilla is taking care of her. When she recovers, she can come out to meet you. This is the meatball cut out of her abdominal cavity. You can cut it open and take a look. There is no complete part inside. The bones and entrails are not babies, but creations brought to life by magic. His voice was smooth and steady, and with the help of magic, it spread throughout the mountain village. The middle-aged man's face suddenly lit up. Not a baby, not really a baby. It's really not. You can cut it open and have a look yourself, or I can do it for you if you need it. The middle-aged man glanced at the pathology basin, shuddered, and turned back. He took another look at the pathology basin, shuddered, and took 2 steps back. Gretel waited patiently, without any impatience. When the patient's family members saw the cut things, they trembled, hid their faces and walked away, or shouted, "Take it, take it." He didn't know how many times he had seen it in his previous life. In fact, there are very few people who dare to come up and take a closer look, or dare to reach out and touch them, let alone those who dare to cut them open with their own hands. As the man hesitated, there was rustling around him, and the villagers who had dispersed earlier had already gathered around him. The man looked around and suddenly said loudly, "Please cut it open and show it to everyone here. Sorry for bothering you." He bowed deeply, his head dropped almost below his knees. Gretel smiled slightly. Doctors are not only treating diseases, nor are they only saving people. Sometimes healing, often helping, always comforting. If you can help the patient elsewhere, it is better to help. Otherwise, how would a young girl live with her reputation as a thief? He flew out 2 mage hands, supported the middle-aged man's body, and helped him stand upright. With a flick of his finger, a piece of dancing light rose into the sky, illuminating the scene brightly. Okay, then I will prove to everyone that what is in your daughter's belly is not a baby at all. Wait, a scream came from the escape cabin. I want to see it too. Wait until I come out before using the knife. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 405. Let me go with you. Please. I can hire a carriage for you, and drive it for you. I am responsible for all expenses along the way. I can be a guide. I've been on the Blackgate Peninsula for 10 years. I know the way wherever you go. Ever since Gretel cut open the teratoma in front of everyone, revealing the messy hair and a few bone fragments and teeth inside, the necromancer Leon Clayton had shamelessly entangled them. Bring your own dry food, be responsible for all expenses, be willing to help drive, book hotels, order meals, be a guide, and be responsible for everything on the road. I just hope that when Greet is in a good mood occasionally while he is on the road, he will miss a sentence or a half and leave it to him. Gretel can't really beat him out. The silver dragon girl was a little displeased with him, but she stretched out her hand to avoid hitting the smiling man. They immediately bought the caravan, laid out the carriage, and respectfully invited you to take a seat. Even if you were rejected, they followed behind with a smile. When they reached a fork in the road, they took the initiative to show the way. When you arrived at the accommodation, you didn't have to go to the owner, he had already booked it for you. Had dinner. If we didn't kick people out on the first day, it would be even more impossible to kick them out on the second day. Not to mention, it started raining lightly the next morning. Mage Nordmark, Miss Elf, you'd better come and sit on the carriage. Leon jumped off the carriage and opened the curtain with a smile on his face. Although you all have rain protection spells, it's more comfortable to ride in a car, isn't it? Riding in a car may not be more comfortable, but it does give you more free time. The carriage Leon bought was also a barbarian caravan. It had a wide interior space, and it was not too crowded for 3 or 4 people to sit with their legs stretched out. Moreover, you don't have to control the mount, so you can focus on research. Gretel and the silver dragon girl got into the car together, and the first thing they did was to ask Bernard to bring the rabbit up. Sarala, didn't you say you want to know why there is electricity in the heart? I've come up with a new idea, come and see. What? Prove that the heart has electricity? Leon leaned back quietly and put half of his ear through the gap in the door curtain. The curtain hanging in front of the caravan immediately raised a round hemisphere, which looked quite happy. Sarara saw it at a glance, stretched out her hand to pull Gretel, and pointed at the half of the ear. Gretel shook his head at her. Why bother? It's not easy for people to learn something. Now that they've made it this far, don't chase them away anymore. The silver dragon girl shrugged, rolled her eyes, suddenly grabbed the rabbit, folded the rabbit's ears, and stretched it out of the car. The thin, fluffy rabbit ears scratched Leon's ear, and the necromancer let out a soft cry and retracted instantly. In the carriage, Sarala covered her lips and laughed so hard. Gretel sighed helplessly. He had no choice but to take out the assembled ammeter, which was actually 2 magnets, a coil, and a spring leaf with a pointer, and drew the silver dragon girl's attention to the topic. Look, there is a pointer connected to a rotating shaft. As long as there is current flowing through it, the needle will rotate. Let's insert the needle into the heart of the rabbit and see. With a crackling sound, a cluster of electric sparks appeared from the fingertips of the silver dragon girl and fell directly on the wire. The spring leaf turned violently and bent directly on the magnet next to it, and a wisp of green smoke came out of the coil. In physics class, a student broke the experimental equipment when he got started and asked how to break it. Oh, you can't beat her yet. You can't hit her either. Being a teacher is a really tough job. In his previous life, Greet worked as a resident doctor, then as an attending physician, and then as an attending physician, then as a deputy director. He had led hundreds of interns, regular training doctors, and resident physicians, and he had never found teaching to be so difficult. Ahem, Sarara, the current of the heart, or the current of human cells, is very small. If you release such a large amount of electricity, the ammeter will burn out. Come on, let's start with a simple proof method. Take this silk, rub the glass rod hard. Leaving Sarara to fiddle with the static electricity, Greet took out a new roll of wire and silently started winding the coil again. As for this wire, he used silver wire mixed with mithril and asked the Royal Quartz jewelers to make it, and then asked someone to insulate it. I don't have the ability to rub it with my hands, so I use a little less. Is the rubbing done? Try it now. Put the glass rod on your hand. Will your fingers shrink? Not really. Misstep, the silver dragon demon has high resistance, and it's just static electricity, so he doesn't notice it at all. You try it with a rabbit. But you have to shave its fur first, otherwise it may not be effective. What, you still need to shave? It's so annoying. I'll come. I'll try. Outside the carriage, Necromancer Leon's head poked in. Relying on the credit of testing electricity, Leon finally got a position in the carriage. After trying friction electrification, and after his fingers were electrified to the satisfaction of Miss Silver Dragon, he was able to summon a few bone hands to fix the rabbit on the carriage. According to Gretel's request, a password and an action. Let's do hypnosis first. Delay the pain. Shaving. Cut the skin. Anesthesia, fixation, shearing, and skin incision. Soon, Gretel stretched out his hand to the necromancer. Give me the knife. I can just do it. You don't need to bother. Wait. What are you going to do? I'm going to show you my heart electromyography. Sirara took a slight breath of air. She reached out and touched the rabbit, white light flashed on her fingertips, and the cut skin healed silently. Under her fingertips, the warm heart of the rabbit beat gently, hitting her fingertips time and time again. Then, I won't read it. In order for me to take a look, I have to kill a life. I really can't do this. She looked at Gretel hesitantly and expectantly. Greet, do you have any other ideas? Gretel was silent. Well, although the dragons look ferocious, they still care about life, at least the silver dragon is like this. There is no point in arguing with her that experimental animals should be killed as long as they are killed. After all, the purpose of the experiment was not to prove the existence of cardiac current, but to demonstrate it. Now people who are looking for a show don't want to dissect a rabbit and insert a heart. Of course there are other methods, such as an electrocardiograph. You only need to turn it on and attach electrode pads to the corresponding parts of the human body to display the electrocardiogram and even print out the graphics. But I know some ways, but I can't do it. For example, Gretel shook his head slightly. An electrocardiograph seems simple, but there are many hurdles to overcome. For example, how to let the weak muscle current pass through the ammeter to drive the pointer without being lost halfway due to resistance loss. If you don't want to kill the rabbit, try another method, insert the electrode needle into the rabbit's chest, just a little shallowly, and see if there is any reaction. This. Let me do it. Gretel picked up two slender electrode needles, flicked the demonized weapon, and gently inserted it for about a minute. Almost at the same time, the pointer of the ammeter swayed slightly. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Thanks to @bookfriend 201706061136209990 for the reward of 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 406. Once, twice, 3 times. An extremely slight shaking that is almost imperceptible to the naked eye. If it weren't for the fact that the ammeter was placed on a floating dish and would not be shaken by the carriage at all, Greet could almost believe that the pointer was being shaken wildly. However, this kind of shaking is rare. Soon, the ammeter pointer. Not moving anymore. Oh, why aren't you moving? You're not dead? You're obviously still angry. 2 pairs of searching eyes looked at Gretel. Greet shook his head helplessly. I don't know either. There are many reasons for not moving. Either the pointer is not sensitive enough, or the friction between the coil and the base has increased, or there is too much clutter, and the pointer does not know which way to swing. More sophisticated instruments are needed. But, he won't do it. In modern society, the social division of labor is becoming more and more detailed. Those who make instruments only make instruments, and those who treat patients only treat patients. Any doctor in the electrocardiogram room, pull them over and let them rub the instrument with their hands, dreaming. Although the principle of this thing is actually simple. Greed heard gossip from his teacher in his previous life. The most primitive electrocardiograph was actually a string galvanometer, two strong magnets sandwiched between a silver-plated quartz wire. However, the processing accuracy is too high. The diameter of the quartz wire should be 0.0025 millimeters, and then it should be coated with a layer of silver. Can you believe it? Accuracy, accuracy, without accuracy, everything is fake. Gretel stared at the ammeter that was easily rubbed out, his eyes blank, and he almost sighed. By the way, even if he made a string galvanometer, it would be useless. The first thing he made weighed 300 kilograms and took up 2 rooms. Instead of spending time fighting this crappy thing, it would be better to go to Thunderhorn with your paper and see who can help improve it. Sarala sat opposite him, stretched out her hand and shook it again. Seeing no response from him, I reached out and touched the lead of the ammeter. Huh! Her eyes lit up. He peeked at Gretel and saw that he was still in an open state. He quickly untied the wires, merged the 2 wires into one, and wrapped them around his fingertips. Hey, there really is electricity. Yes, there is really electricity. Greet woke up with a start, raised his eyelids, and answered listlessly. Silver Dragon, this talent is really amazing. Holding a wire in your hand, you can feel the electric current with your physical body. But how to turn the current she feels into an electrocardiogram waveform that anyone can see and record with the naked eye? Gretel shook his head. Sarara shook her head. Necromancer on the side, although I don't understand what you are talking about, but since I can't even understand, I still shake my head together. Bernard, who is driving the car outside, all 3 of them have shaken. Do you need me to shake it together? If you can't think of it, you can't think of it. The Silver Dragon girl suddenly clapped her hands, her eyes shining brightly. Don't worry, when we get to my aunt, she will definitely find a way. She has the most powerful magic. Gretel hesitated. Sarara had dragged him away before because he couldn't explain the principle of an electrocardiogram. Sarara wanted to ask her aunt to help her take a look. However, Greet's idea was to get things out before that. No knowledge comes without a price. Please ask a silver dragon, or an adult silver dragon, to help me study the electrocardiogram. I won't be able to repay the reward even if you sell it, right? Oh, it doesn't matter, the silver dragon girl waved her hand confidently and said. My aunt is pregnant, and she is not allowed to go out to play. She is bored to death. If we go to her now, no matter what we do, she will definitely welcome us. How long does it take for a silver dragon to nest? If it's been more than a year, and you are a healthy dragon with no nausea, vomiting, pregnancy-induced hypertension, or gestational diabetes, being locked up in a den will be really boring. There must be a road before the car reaches the mountain. At worst, I would go back to the Magic Council and apply for project funding with my thesis in hand. The research on electrocardiograms temporarily hit a bottleneck. Greet held his chin and thought for a moment, then put aside his thoughts and raised his fingers to the necromancer. Do me a favor and move the rabbit over. Leon put his backhand on the cardboard behind him, squirming, and moved over with the rabbit. Sarara moved forward, stared at the rabbit she had just rescued, and then looked at Gretel. What are you going to do? You're not going to have a dissection again, are you? I won't cut my belly open this time. Gretel had a smile on his face, but his eyes were extremely solemn. He held down the rabbit's right hind leg with his left hand, turned out the blade with his right hand, and finished the skinning with ease. The index and middle fingers of the right hand were put together and groped back and forth on the rabbit's groin, feeling the vigorous beating of the femoral artery. It's here. Raising his hand, Magic Trick accurately dyes the femoral artery with color. Cleansing technique, iodine, alcohol, after 3 cleanings, delaying pain fell. Sarala, don't move. As he ordered, he touched the space bag, and the sealed syringe and the glass box fell into his palm. Before anyone could react, Greet unpacked the package, took out the syringe, aligned the needle tip with the mark, and inserted it downward at a 45-degree angle. The silver dragon girl took a small breath. She glanced at Gretel quickly and quickly covered her lips. Don't disturb me at this time. If the sound gets louder and Gretel shakes his hand, the rabbit will bleed again. Fortunately, the needle only advanced a little and stopped. Gretel pulled back the syringe slightly, and when he saw the blood flowing out from the end of the needle, his hand shook, magic power surged out, and he immediately removed the syringe barrel. Sarala breathed a sigh of relief, raised her fingertips, the white light flickered gently, and turned her head to look at Greet inquiringly. Are you done? Do you want help with treatment? Gretel lowered his head and did not look at her. Putting down the syringe, he tapped the space bag again, and a handful of seeds fell into his hand. Soon, a green vine swayed in the wind, holding a silver thread thinner than a hair, and silently slipped into the needle tube. Greet pursed her lips tightly and looked intently. He took out the endless ink pen with his left hand and stuffed it under the rabbit, and used his right hand to push the vines forward. It's in, the shadow on Detect Magic clearly shows that the vine has passed through the needle and entered the femoral artery. Now there is no need to insert the catheter, so the puncture needle does not need to be withdrawn, just right, there is no need to find ways to find the catheter sheath. Next, the vines move upward with all their strength, carrying silver threads. Go against the direction of blood flow, enter the external iliac artery, enter the common iliac artery, enter the abdominal aorta, enter the thoracic aorta, make a bend along the aortic arch and go straight to the heart. Inserted into the heart, Sarala covered her lips tightly, pressing her fingertips above her lips until they turned white. She was breathing rapidly and her eyes were wide open, as if the vine was not inserted into the rabbit's body, but her own heart. Gretel, what are you doing? Are you going to kill it? Shhh. It won't die. It's just a catheter inserted into the heart. The pioneer who pioneered interventional surgery inserted a urinary catheter into the heart through the median vein of the left elbow and took an X-ray. He was still alive and well. That Dwarfsman is so awesome, he did it himself and inserted it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Lan 2020. Chapter 407. Chapter 407. The vine exits the heart. Oh, it didn't exit. What? What's stuck in the heart? The necromancer hurriedly poked his head over, eyes widening as hard as he could, but couldn't see anything. Miss Yinlong lowered her voice and whispered. Detect magic. See for yourself. Ah! Leon let out a low exclamation. In the meditation field of view, among the thick and light shadows, a long line snakes like a snake, rising from the junction of the rabbit's right leg and torso, all the way to the heart. Gretel squinted his eyes and looked at the vine inserted into the rabbit's heart in his meditation field of vision, filled with emotion. In the 2 years since he left Heartland City, he has not forgotten that cabin, Uncle Karen who took care of him when he was growing up, and Aunt Eileen who stayed up all night to change his clothes. Moreover, he will never forget little sister Avril Lavigne, who suffered from patent ductus arteriosus, was born weak, and had cyanosis on her fingernails. When he boarded Archmage Carlyle's airship and flew to the Parliament headquarters, he secretly said to himself, "Give me 8 years. Sister Avril has 10 years at most, so 8 years, preferably within 5 years, I want to find a way to safely perform interventional surgery." To achieve this goal, staying in Heartland City and immersing yourself in running a small clinic will not work. It's not enough to stay in Neva City and immerse yourself in experiments in the Mage Tower. To improve the level of a mage, you need to practice both magic and divine arts, you need to develop medical magic and medicine at the same time, and you need to have enough patience. 2 years of hard work, 2 years of study. From a first-level mage to a fourth-level mage, Greed has already gone through half the journey of interventional treatment. Ultrasound magic, done. Penicillin research and development, completed. Chloramphenicol, streptomycin, tetracycline and other antibiotics are under development. The vine birthing technique is completed, and a wave of proficiency has been refreshed on the dwarves. Syringe manufacturing, complete. Use silver wire to guide the healing power at fixed points, complete. Local anesthesia magic, completed. Next, as long as the vines can be successfully sent into the heart, the treatment can be guided under X-ray and ultrasound, and the sealing operation can be performed. Of course, there are still a lot to successfully complete the seal. Experiments to be done. Gretel narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Although guiding the vines uses mental power, observing the position of the vines, and the marked silver wires, is reflected back and projected in the meditation field of vision by detection magic, neither of which requires eyes. However, it seems that only this action can make him see more clearly. The sinoatrial node above the right atrium lights the fire of life. The atria contract, the mitral and tricuspid valves relax, and blood is squeezed into the ventricles. The most powerful muscles of the heart on the ventricular wall are stimulated to contract by the electrical signals sent by the sinoatrial node, causing the most powerful contraction. At the same time, the aortic valve opens, and the arterial blood carrying rich oxygen is pumped into the aorta by strong pressure, while the tentative vine that has been wandering in the aortic arch raises its head and goes upstream, directly inserting into the left ventricle. The ventricular wall relaxes, the aortic valve closes, and the vines and silver wires are caught in the middle of the aortic valve, unable to advance or retreat. After going through a cycle of relaxation, diastitation, atrial contraction, ventricular contraction again, the vines contract and retreat sharply. Oops, I didn't exit. The normal heart rate of a rabbit is 180 to 250 beats per minute. During this period, ventricular systole, the time it takes for the heart to pump blood to the aorta according to the way the human heart operates, is about 3/8 of the cardiac cycle. In other words, he has to complete the operation of pulling out the vines within 0.125 seconds. Don't panic. Even if it is temporarily stuck in the middle of the aortic valve and cannot be pulled out in time, the rabbit will not die. Dr. Forsman, the pioneer of cardiac catheterization technology, inserted the catheter into the right atrium and took an X-ray. There is plenty of time. No wonder the boss chose to insert the left median cubital vein into the right atrium. The catheter enters the right atrium from the superior vena cava. There is no valve, it is smooth and silky. Try again. Try again. Okay, it worked. Greed let out a breath of air. It must be said that manipulating vines is easier than manipulating guide wires, it only requires concentration. As for the guide wire with a diameter of 1 mm travels in the blood vessel, entering 30 cm, 40 cm, 1 meter, turning, and crossing the fork, all depends on the doctor's skill. Imagine that you are 1 meter away, shaking a 1 mm thick guide wire in the midst of turbulent blood flow. Let it turn 30 degrees, 60 degrees, move the tip left/right/up/down 1.5 mm, enter a certain bifurcation, and penetrate into the lower blood vessels. Anyway, Greed had always admired the big guys in the vascular department in his previous life. He held the vine seeds with his right thumb, index finger, and middle finger, manipulated the vine to exit, and pulled the silver wire to move backward. The only trouble with pinching a silver wire is that you have to pull it out bit by bit. If you just use vines, just cancel the spell and the vines will disappear. Gee, how do you develop a vine that can develop within the body? I have to ask my mentor later, or ask Elder Wood. Greed pondered and thought, but his hands were not slow at all. The vine wrapped around the silver wire and came to the entrance of the femoral artery, but instead of withdrawing immediately, it turned around and went down to the popliteal artery. The vine suddenly reared up and bited the wall of the popliteal artery. Gretel's fingers were already covered with glycerin. Under the magic of B ultrasound, you can see that near the blood vessel wall, the entire image is blurred, like a mosaic. Well, the blood vessel wall ruptures, blood flows out, the required effect is achieved, and it can be treated. He immediately activated the healing technique, followed the silver thread up, and gathered a small group of light at the location of the wound. Stop bleeding and heal blood vessel walls. Under visual inspection, it can be seen that the injured area no longer continues to bulge, and the blurred area under the B ultrasound magic no longer expands. Very good, the treatment from inside the blood vessels was successful. Let's see if there will be any sequelae. Gretel held his breath and carefully continued to manipulate the vines to exit. When the tip of the silver wire left the rabbit's femoral artery, Greet threw out a treatment technique, couldn't wait to take out the microscope, and directly hit the silver wire onto the stage. Thrombus. Thrombus. How many clots will be produced if the silver wire travels in the body for such a long time? In previous lives, interventional surgeries, whether interventional examinations or interventional treatments, all required heparin anticoagulation. Not to mention, if a treatment is launched inside a blood vessel, how many clots will be hanging on it? Will it cause thrombosis and affect the patient's life safety? Alas, interventional surgery without heparin sodium is always panicky. Fortunately, there is only one silver thread. Unlike the guide wire of the previous life, which seemed to be 1 mm in diameter, it had a double-layer structure, with a steel core on the inside and a layer of spring coils tightly wound on the outside. The surface area of the silver wire is so much smaller, so the blood clotting caused by it should be much less, right? Gretel, why are you inserting vines into its heart? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Asking for various. By the way, the guy who pioneered human intravenous cannulation and the nurses who assisted him were also weird. After tying up the nurse, I took the opportunity to be indescribable, times. After tying up the nurse, he took the opportunity to intubate himself intravenously, square root. After being tied up, the nurse was worried about becoming an experimental subject and cried, times. After being tied up, the nurse found out that she had been tricked and failed to become the experimental subject, and she cried in anger, square root. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 408. I have a little sister next door in my hometown. Gretel stroked the rabbit's fur, spoke in a gentle voice, and started from the beginning. The silver dragon girl sat across from her with her knees clasped, listening intently. With every movement of her fingertips, the phantom silently changed. Blood vessels, heart, lungs, blood vessels with a hole. So, you just want to insert a vine in, direct the healing power, and plug the hole? Can it be cured now? Not yet. What's missing? For example, there is a magic that can directly see the heart current, so that I can know whether the heart beats normally. For example, there is a magic that allows me to see exactly where the vines are. For example, I want to know how to insert a silver wire into it. Will the blood coagulate and block blood vessels? Gretel stretched out a palm and bent his fingers one by one to explain to her. Every time she said something, Sirrah's waist sank a little. When Gretel clenched his fingers into fists, she buried her head on her knees and swayed. Ugh, I don't know how to do it, so I can't help. It doesn't matter, it's already difficult. Gretel tried to comfort her. Each technical difficulty in these requirements means one or even more than one Nobel Prize, or the condensation of the top level of the human pharmaceutical industry and the hard work of millions or tens of millions of people for generations. It's not strange that he can't do it. If the local aborigines can use magic to get around it, they are the strongest among the strong. It's okay. I can't do it, but my aunt can definitely do it. Gretel, when we get to the mountain, I'll ask my aunt for help. Let's speed up dash. Wait. Just walk slowly on the ground like this, Gretel quickly stopped her. Wait until I do more experiments and get the vine insertion part done, then I can solve the other problems. How long will it take? Oh, wouldn't it be nice to just walk all the way and help the patients on the way? This reason easily convinced Sarala. As a silver dragon, she took an instinctive pleasure in helping the weak, the sick, and those in need. Anyway, if half a month or a month passes, I won't be able to find my aunt. From the time a silver dragon becomes pregnant until the hatchling hatches, it will take at least a few years, okay. With Leon showing the way and Bernard driving and caring for the animals, the trip went very smoothly. Sarala followed him, and every night, she could see endless new tricks. Laparoscopic surgery for appendicitis. Vine, laryngoscope, to remove fish bones. Craniotomy to induce congestion. Pore fracture healing, interruption of reconnection. Tendon continuation. Remove gallstones, remove kidney stones, remove bladder stones, remove tophi. Naturally, if he met a dwarf who met the indications for lung cleaning, and if he strongly requested it, Gretel would have to go back to his old job and clean the other person's lungs. Such treatment, of course, cannot be without remuneration. Regardless of whether they are dwarves or barbarians, there is no such thing as unrequited kindness or defaulting on medical bills in their dictionary. Therefore, not only were accommodation and meals free along the way, but the villagers along the way also threw their valuables onto the caravan. No need. It's really not necessary. Every time the treatment is completed, Miss Silver Dragon's biggest entertainment is to watch Gretel stretch out his hands and block left and right. Take back the gold coins. Take back the silver collar and the silver pot. If you really want to pay me, just give me a live rabbit, 2 at most. Although Silver Dragon also loves treasures, she does not covet them if they are not her own rewards. Rather than treating the villagers yourself and then earning some gold coins and treasures, it would be more fun to watch Gretel's various strange treatment methods and then watch him try to refund the rewards. Even if it was a rabbit or something, Gretel didn't want much. 1 per day, maximum 2. These live rabbits or sometimes piglets and lambs were used by Greet in cardiac interventional practice. Puncture. Insert the vine. Probe into the heart and activate the healing technique. After practice, keep them in the rear of the caravan for a few days and observe them closely. Finally, those small animals that died abnormally during the process or survived strongly will be disemboweled and dissected in detail under the great knife. Check for blood clots, myocardial infarction, or other complications. Finally, of course, add oil, add salt, add chili. Roast rabbit legs. Spicy bunny. Braised rabbit. Rabbit stewed with radish. Gretel. You actually ate the rabbit's head. On the rolling carriage, Miss Silver Dragon murmured and stretched out her hand to grab the rabbit meat. While chewing, he hissed and stuck out his tongue, which made his eyes full of tears. Even so, the movements are no slower than humans. Ha, ha. No, my hands shook when I was cooking and I added too much chili. Greet breathed out and handed over a can of milk. With a flick of his finger, a freezing ray fell into the milk can. Drink this, the fastest way to relieve spicy food. Anyway, Silver Dragon is not afraid of getting fat. 2 people, 1 piece for you and 1 piece for me, will share a rabbit. Bernard sat on the shaft and enjoyed the other one to himself. As for the necromancer Leon, unfortunately he couldn't eat spicy food. Walk all the way, heal all the way, eat all the way. The carriage winds its way north, becoming increasingly desolate and sparsely populated as it goes. From being able to encounter roadside stalls every noon, to being able to encounter villages only at night, to walking all day without seeing anyone. After not seeing anyone for 2 consecutive days, on the evening of the 3rd day, Sarala finally pulled the reins of the horse at the entrance of the village. Leon, please stop here. Silver Dragon looked at the snow caps on the mountains in the north, his clear eyes shining brightly under the sunset, almost shining golden. This is the last village. We don't know how long we will stay at my aunt's place. You can wait here or return, but it's best not to follow us. Yes, I will obey your orders. The necromancer bowed his head respectfully. Along the way, he had some guesses about Sarah's identity, but he didn't dare to reveal it. After answering, he turned to Gretel and performed a mage salute. Thank you for your guidance along the way, Master Nordmark. I will wait here until early summer next year, and look forward to meeting you again before then. They spent their last night in the village. Early the next morning, the 3 abandoned their horses and caravan, Gretel on horseback, Sarala and Bernard on foot, and walked into the wilderness side by side. After the village disappeared from sight, Sarala couldn't wait to transform back into her dragon form, grabbing Gretel with one paw and Bernard with the other. It's killing me. Gretel, let's go. The dragon wings spread out and soared into the sky. The cold wind blows in my face. Moors, rocks, and meadows passed beneath their feet. Greet looked up under the dragon's claws. The mountains to the north were getting closer and closer. Over rivers, over cliffs, over canyons. Seeing that they had reached the foot of the mountain, the young silver dragon suddenly fell to the ground and kept panting. I'll take a rest before taking you up, I'm so tired. She was almost lying on the ground, her shining silver wings gently fluttering, and puffs of hot air exhaled from her nostrils. Just as Greet was about to step forward, she heard a soft female voice floating in the air. No, you come up alone. As for these 2 little ones, let them climb the mountain. And Sarala suddenly looked up. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 409. What? Sarala flapped her wings and suddenly raised her head. The faint smell of rain and coniferous forests drifts down in the wind. Looking up into the distance, thin clouds and mist lingered on the mountainside, blocking the view, and the aunt and her husband could not be seen. Sarala raised her head and shouted. Auntie, they are my friends. I know, come up. The voice was ethereal. Sarala grabbed a handful of rocks angrily, and the stone as big as a human head disintegrated under her feet, and the bones rolled down. Damn it, I have to listen to my aunt's words, mainly because I'm carrying 2 people, and with my aunt's pressure, I can't fly to the top. She did not return to her human form, her slender neck bent down, and she came close to Gretel. Gretel, wait here, I'll go find my aunt. Huh, my friend, I can't even bring him here myself. With a flap of his wings, a strong wind whipped up and he flew high. Dive into the clouds and disappear. On the platform outside the dragon's nest, a much taller silver dragon lay there waiting quietly. Sarala restrained her wings and swooped down, almost hitting her head on. She stopped hard at the last moment. And, They are my friends, why did you let them climb the mountain by themselves? I don't want you to pick them up, I will take them up myself. I will be angry if you don't agree. I will just leave with them. Let's go now. Her long neck rested on the older silver dragon's shoulder and neck, rubbing against each other and making a lot of noise. The older man lay quietly on the platform and let her act coquettishly. After a while, the dragon's claw lifted up and threw a shining magic crystal. Auntie is doing it for his own good. Besides, this is also the request of his elders. I just follow it. Then, take a look. Cyrilla muttered and took the magic crystal. Magic power was input, and soon, a figure floated up and spoke. Dear Lady Ophelia. If it hadn't been for the request, the silver dragon Ophelia really wouldn't have done anything to embarrass Gretel. Long before the little mage set foot in the wilderness, even before he and Cyrilla left the royal court and set off northward, he had entered the sight of the silver dragons. Silver dragons are different from five-color dragons. They have a more familial concept and take better care of their young. Newborn dragonettes will not be kicked out of the nest when they are young, but will stay with their parents until they are teenagers before leaving their parents to travel. Teenagers walking outside are not alone. They often receive support and help from their parents and elders. Naturally, the human mage who saved the little princess Yuehui and stayed by his side had been observed by more than one adult dragon in various ways before he knew it. A low-level mage who is also a priest of the god of nature. In the dwarf king's court, on the way north, cure diseases and save people, cure diseases and save people, cure diseases and save people. Try your best and don't reject anyone who comes. It can be said that he has quite an appetite for silver dragon. Even if there is no introduction from Cyrilla, the silver dragons will still welcome them to visit the dragon nest directly. But, the silver dragon Ophelia turned her head and glanced at the magic crystal. This was sent by a certain legendary mage from the Magic Council just a month ago. The purpose was to ask her to take care of the little guy. Give him some pressure and let him advance quickly. Don't linger on level 4. As we all know, climbing the dragon's nest with the dragon's power is a good way to face pressure and challenge yourself. The advantage is that it is gradual and the risks are controllable. The intelligent race near Ophelia, the young mountain eagles, often come to climb when they have nothing to do. As for the shortcomings, the shortcoming is that the popularity of this method is too low. Finding the dragon's nest is already difficult. Once you find it, the dragon is willing to sit back and watch you climb up instead of knocking you down with a magic spell. Unless you are familiar with the dragon, the chance is infinitely close to zero. Cyrilla read the information in the magic crystal again and again. After tossing and turning several times, she threw back the magic crystal and flapped her wings twice. Then, Auntie, should I go down now and crawl with them in human form? What do you think? Woo! At the foot of the mountain, Greed flipped the space bag upside down and took out all the equipment. Food, water bags, leggings, trekking poles with wrist straps. In preparation for climbing the dwarf holy mountain, I didn't have all the equipment I needed at the time, but I didn't expect that I would use them all here. As for Cyrilla taking them up, Greed had no hope at all considering the comparison in combat power between adult dragons and young dragons. Sure enough, after a while, a long gust of wind blew down, and the familiar voice of the silver dragon girl came. Greed, I was imprisoned by my aunt, climb up by yourself. Come on, it's not difficult. My aunt said that even an ordinary person with perseverance can reach the top in 3 days at most. I'll be waiting for you on the mountain. About 3 days. In a previous life, I climbed Mount Everest, starting from the North Slope base camp and climbing to the top in 4 days. Gretel was thinking, if you can climb the dragon's nest from here, you don't need to climb more than 3,000 meters, right? Besides, The pressure of climbing more than 3,000 meters on flat ground is absolutely different from climbing more than 3,000 meters on a 5,000 meter plateau. He stands here without any altitude sickness at all. Climb. Greet put on his leggings, carried a water bag and a food bag, and prepared to open the way. Holding the hiking pole in his hand and the oak staff of the god of nature in his right hand, he stepped onto the hillside in one step. A few tree roots quietly poked out from the bottom of the oak staff, ready to plunge into the cracks of the rock to save the master at any time. By the way, which way is the way to climb the mountain? Gretel, look over there. The savage raised his arms high. Gretel stood on tiptoe to take a look and was happy. There is a cone-shaped pile of rocks on the hillside not far away. A branch was inserted at the top of the pile of rocks. Under the branch, a triangular stone was painted ochre, with the sharpest corner pointing directly up the mountain. Gee, isn't this a road sign? Bernard, let's go. Wait a minute, boss, I'll go in front of you to clear the way. You should walk behind me. If I miss the mark, you can still stop me. After being trained on the dwarf holy mountain, this level of mountaineering was completely beyond Gretel's grasp. Although his back ached due to lack of exercise, he still had the strength to climb up after a night's rest. However, when I climbed to noon the next day, I was out of breath, my heart was beating like thunder, and I could no longer lift my feet. Damn it, is this a high reaction, Bernard? Let me take a break and let me take some oxygen. Among the huge rocks on the top of the mountain, Ophelia was lying in the hall of the dragon's lair, curiously looking at the light curtain in front of her. Greet took out an arm-long tin can from his space bag, unscrewed the lid, and buried his face in the mask in front of the tin can. He breathed heavily, and within a few moments, his red face calmed down. Interesting little guy, it seems like you have to work harder to bring out your potential. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 410. The oxygen bottle Gretel took out was the one he asked Archmage Serrano to help prepare in order to climb the dwarf holy mountain. The design idea is roughly copied from the oxygen bottles provided to tourists by tour groups at the foot of Jade Dragon Snow Mountain. The oxygen content is unknown, the internal pressure is unknown, the strength of the bottle is unknown. And Gretel didn't dare to fill up with too much oxygen. Oxygen bottles are pressure vessels, which have extremely high requirements on the quality of the bottle. If it does not meet the standard, it would not be unusual for you to see it explode. He didn't want to touch a bottle and just take a few breaths of oxygen, and there would be a bang, and fragments would fly across his throat. The mage armor probably can't block it, and adding a shield spell may not be able to block it either. In short, due to various concerns, Gretel could only ask Master Serrano to reduce the amount of oxygen, just to be safe. This also means that the effect of oxygen inhalation from an oxygen bottle is, well, a little better than a placebo. At least Gretel took a few breaths of oxygen, his face turned from red to white, and he was halfway recovered. He made a mark on the oxygen bottle, put it back into the space bag, used a hiking stick in one hand and an oak stick in the other, half bent his body, and continued to climb step by step. The snail is carrying that heavy shell and climbing up step by step. Boss, if that doesn't work, can I carry you on my back? Don't, hoo-hoo. Greet raised the hiking pole in his left hand and placed it on a higher rock. He used both arms to push on the ground with his left leg. Taking advantage of the situation, the body rises upwards, shifts the center of gravity to the right leg, and then drags the left foot up and over the right foot. You are also very tired, huh, huh. Damn it, how could Bernard be so tired? Greet suddenly reacted. Bernard is a level 7 warrior, much stronger than him. Logically speaking, when he collapses from exhaustion, Bernard should still be able to carry him with one hand and walk easily and swiftly. Why is it that now, while he is huffing and sweating, Bernard is too tired to lift his legs. Altitude sickness? It shouldn't be. The last time I climbed the Dwarf Holy Mountain, I had a headache, palpitations, chest tightness, and shortness of breath. Bernard was still fine. Now, although he is tired, he has not yet experienced high reflexes. How could he? Bernard, what's wrong with you? Do you have a headache? No, boss, I'm just flustered. There's something very scary up there, just like the first time I saw Miss Sarah. Okay, the case is solved. Bernard was gasping for air and couldn't lift his feet. He was oppressed by the dragon's power. However, because of the protection of the endless ink pen, he didn't feel the dragon's power at all. Being so tired was simply due to his physical exhaustion. Bernard, would you like to take a breath of oxygen and take a break? No need, the barbarian shook his head vigorously. He caught up a few steps in succession, and the big bone stick in his right hand hit the rock with a muffled thud. I'm about to break through. Boss, I have a hunch that I will definitely be able to break through when I climb to the top of the mountain this time. Okay, stress training, whatever suits you. Gretel raised his head, looked at the mountain peaks in the clouds and mist above, and sighed longly. There is still a day and a half to go before the summit. Such a long distance can make Bernard feel oppressed. How strong must the silver dragon above be? In the dragon's lair, Ophelia is teaching her niece. When you choose to build a nest, you must not be lazy. You must dye the top and bottom of the mountain with aura. In this way, you can activate the power of the dragon from a long distance away, and those little guys who are not strong enough will not be able to touch you. Tisk, this dragon's power cannot be increased. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if the little mage didn't feel it yet and forced his followers to roll down the hillside. Alas, the mental strength of barbarians is really poor. Gretel has yet to intuitively feel how strong the silver dragon on the top of the mountain is. However, he soon felt the feeling of climbing the mountain with long way. Early on the third day, Gretel put on crampons in front of the campsite and crossed the snow line ahead. At the first step, I felt a boom in my forehead. I go. What kind of rhythm is this? He leaned back reflexively, raised his hand, and rubbed his forehead. When he took that step just now, he felt dizzy and his ears buzzed, as if he had been hit in the face with a sap. My hair stood on end and my heart was beating wildly. I didn't even need to feel my pulse to know that my heart rate was over 120 at this time. Being so far away can give him a sense of oppression. A creature like the silver dragon is really unreasonably strong. Greet gritted his teeth and continued to climb up. After only taking a few steps, he found it difficult to breathe and his heart was beating hard. My whole body was sore and my legs and feet were heavy. Every time I lifted it up, I felt like I had to use all my strength. Then you have to climb. If you don't climb up there, how can you see the silver dragon and ask for the magic of electrocardiogram? Greet gritted his teeth and threw an inspiration technique to himself with his backhand. This magic blessing came up, like a shot of adrenaline, and my breathing became lighter. Immediately afterwards, vines grew out of his left and right hands at the same time, entangling his hands with the trekking poles and oak sticks. Bernard, let's go. Okay, boss. Crampons made a clicking sound on the snow. Ophelia was lying on the dragon's nest, looking at Gretel's equipment curiously through the light curtain. Crampons, gloves, 2 long sticks, hood, black glasses. The fur sleeves on the boots were wrapped up to the bottom of the knees to block the snow that poured into the boots. A hard tube protrudes from the collar on the back, and a water bag is connected underneath, allowing the owner to turn his head and take a sip of water at any time. This piece of equipment has saved the owner's physical strength to the maximum extent. It's quite interesting, but little guy, it's useless for you to save your energy. I can increase the strength of long way. The climb. The climb. Climb up. There is cold and heat resistance, So you don't have to worry about the cold wind blowing on your face. There is the power of a bull and the elegance of a cat. You can cross the most difficult terrain without danger. There are space bags and oxygen bottles, no need to carry heavy luggage, you can even take a break once in a while. Gretel was still dizzy from crawling. The higher you go, the more powerful you get, the feeling of being heavy and suffocating. When I started, I still had enough time to look ahead and told Bernard to be careful. After climbing for half an hour, I only had enough strength to look down at the road and walk up step by step. Raise your hands, set down your trekking poles, lift your feet, put your feet down. My chest was burning, and my eyes were getting black. With every step he took, his entire foot sank deeply into the snow, all the way to his calves. When he straightened his rear leg again and pushed his whole body up a step, it felt like he was pushing away a huge boulder. I'm so tired, take another breath of oxygen. Gretel touched the space bag again. When his fingertips touched the mouth of the bag, he suddenly froze. Only the last bottle left. There is only one oxygen bottle that has not been used and has not been marked. He looked back subconsciously. On the snowy slope behind him, Bernard climbed up step by step, holding onto a bone stick. The barbarian's face was red, his veins were protruding, and his eyes were empty and unfocused. Looking at it like that, his energy was almost lost, and he was already relying on instinct to hold on. Greet's fingers clenched on the space bag, let go, clenched, and let go again. Finally, he turned his head, gripped the trekking pole and oak stick tightly, gritted his teeth and continued climbing. The last bottle of oxygen should be reserved for Bernard, just in case. The road ahead will not depend on anything else, but on myself. Inspiration technique. Inspiration technique. No, I can't cast any more spells, my heart is already beating too fast. If I inject epinephrine again, my blood pressure will skyrocket, myocardial ischemia, arrhythmia, and all other symptoms will appear. Use other methods to resist long way. Mage armor. Mental strength. Greet subconsciously held up the magic shield. It's not the mage's armor or the shield technique, but all the magic power that the mage can mobilize, flowing, stirring, and woven into the most primitive cover. Well, it's getting better, the feeling of oppression is not so strong. But it consumes too much. This shape is not good, a perfectly round shield wastes too much surface area. It should be narrower, gathered into a streamlined shape, and the front should be made into a bullet shape. Following Gretel's thoughts, the magic shield gradually deformed, tightened, and thickened. Soon, more spiritual power seeped into the shield, opening up the dragon's power from the outside world. In the dragon's nest above, the silver dragon Ophelia held her chin and nodded with a smile. The little guy is good. He finally reacted and began to hone his mental strength. However, with this little ability, he can't walk in front of me, huh? On the oak stick in Greet's right hand, there are 4 green leaves, which are automatic in the absence of wind. The whole wooden staff seemed to have come to life, taking root and sprouting. It was green and growing upwards. Before I knew it, I had grown more than half a foot taller. And a vigorous vitality also appeared at the tip of Greet's shield. Weak, immature, but unyielding, she managed to find a way out of the dragon's power that she suppressed. 2,600 words. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Asking for various